everybody. Welcome to the Vox Podcast. Mike, Erre, Timothy Stafford, and our Palestinian friend Jesus of Nazareth want to welcome you to our little recording, our little show, if you will. Thank you for giving us some time today, whatever it is that you're in the midst of. If you're trying to sleep, you picked a great episode because I think we will lull you very quickly into a deep slumber.
Away.
We got to jump right in because we've got, Jesus he just doesn't let up. He just doesn't let up at all. So today we're going to one of his most famous sayings. It's a saying that's been very shockingly misunderstood and has led us down all sorts of false rabbit trails. But it is particularly relevant. We're recording this the week of the announcement of Breonna Taylor and the lack of indictments about that, and another just instance of a world splitting, our culture dividing. It is so tumultuous. I've never, in my 30-something years of life, plus a few, I've never seen anything like it. And you pile COVID and economics, and I don't know. It just feels like a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah.
And so we've been trying to center ourselves on the politics of this social entity called the Kingdom of God. And those politics are exemplified in the way of Jesus, how he conducted himself, what he did, how he did it. Paul just invites us to imitate Jesus in these ways as part of the local expressions of this polis called churches. But it's just, these are social gatherings ordered by the teachings and example of Jesus of Nazareth. That's what we're doing. So we've got a lot to practice today, as we'll see. Our friend Sarah is going to read this text for us, and so she'll take it away.
Here she goes.
Sarah, take it away.
You have heard that it was said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over to them your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you.
The voice of an angel.
It's a whole choir at this point. So many angels.
So many angels. Yeah, this one and the next one are Jesus's least practiced teachings.
That's saying a lot.
Yeah. The bar isn't high on that one. So before we get into eyes and cheeks and cloaks, I want to start in the book of Judges for just a little background. As one does. Judges, not a fun read. Unless you really are interested in seeing people self-destruct over and over and over again, which, for some of us, we live that story. But the Israelites are now in the land, and over and over and over again, they're disobedient, and God raises up a deliverer called a judge. Anyway, I want to tell a bit of the story of Samson. This is from Judges 15. And I find this one of the more gruesome and which is saying something, stories in the Old Testament. In Judges 15, so Samson is married. He goes to visit his wife. He took a young goat to show how serious he was about that.
I did that once.
And when he arrived at his wife's father's compound, he says, "I'm going to go to my wife's room." But her father would not let Samson go in. the father says to Samson, I was so sure you hated her that I gave her to your companion. Isn't her younger sister more attractive? Take her instead. All right, now Samson married outside of the Israelite tribe, so he's married to a Philistine woman. He goes to visit her. The father has given her to somebody else and instead offers the younger sister.
I hate it when that happens.
Right? It's an all too common scenario.
Goat.
What?
He even brought a goat.
He brought a goat. He did.
Come on, Dad.
Now Samson said to them, this time I have a right to get even with the Philistines. I will really harm them. So evidently there's some history here. This time he says, I have a right to get even. So he went out, caught 300 foxes, tied them tail to tail in pairs, and fastened a torch to every pair and burned the Philistine crops.
300
All right, so
foxes.
we've gone, yes, 300 foxes. When the Philistines asked who did this, the answer, they were told it was Samson. So the Philistines went up and burned his wife and her father to death. All right?
Took a dark turn.
Samson said to them, since you've acted like this, I swear that I won't stop until I get my revenge on you. He attacked them viciously and slaughtered many of them. Philistines went up to Judah. Samson was in a cave. They go to Judah. Judah's like, dude, why are you picking on us? They're like, we just want Samson. So Samson makes a deal with the Judahites and says, listen, as long as you don't kill me, go ahead and tie me, bind me with a rope, and hand me over to the Philistines. And it's so good. So 3,000 men from Judah went down to this cave and they say, don't you realize the Philistines are rulers over us? What have you done? And he answered, I merely did to them what they did to me. And then he makes this deal that they'll just tie him up. And then the story ends. They bound him with new ropes, led him over to the rock. As he approached the Philistines, the spirit came upon him. The ropes in his arms became like charred flax. The bindings dropped on his hands. Finding a fresh jawbone of a donkey, he grabbed it and struck down 1,000 men. And there goes another warm, happy Bible story. So the thing I've always found interesting in this, it starts with a pretty grave insult, right? The insult to Samson about giving his wife. And what we know of Samson, the dad probably had good reason to do this. Samson was not a very classy fellow. And so Samson said, well, this time I have a right to get even. So he burns their whole crops. He destroys their economy. The Philistines hear about this. And so they burn the woman and her father to death. At which point Samson says, well, since you've acted in this way, I can now get my revenge on you. And he begins slaughtering them. The other Israelites are like, dude, what are you doing? Well, I'm just doing what they did to me. And then the story ends with Samson killing 1,000 of the Philistines with the jawbone of a donkey. So we go from insult to murder to wholesale slaughter, right? In just the space of a few verses. And this is a beautiful illustration of how vengeance worked in those days and still even today, right? Revenge is one of those things that it's never satisfied. Every time someone does evil to another, the evil is repaid and escalated. So you get into this vicious sort of cycle that can start with an insult and it just keeps going. We see this all over the internet, right? Somebody is not wearing a mask and it escalates. Somebody is confronted in a store and it escalates. We're just seeing this all the time. And so in the Old Testament, because this was the way vengeance worked, vengeance could go from insult to whole family slaughtering each other. There were laws that were given to restrict revenge. And so they're what Jesus refers to in Matthew, but in the Old Testament, they were just laws like this. They were like, anyone who injures, this is from Leviticus, anyone who injures their neighbor is to be injured in the same manner. fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. The one who has inflicted the injury must suffer the same injury. Or in Exodus, but if there is serious injury, you are to take life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. Or in Deuteronomy, show no pity, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Now, it sounds utterly barbaric to us, but I'm actually telling you that this was a great advance forward. Because what these laws did is, first, they were designed. This was not language that literally, if someone poked your eye out, you would go poke their eye out. This was advice that was used by judges in determining punishments. So the idea was you would forsake personal vengeance. You would take the person to the court. And in ancient Near East, it was usually a group of elders that were by the village gates. And the elders, instead of taking personal vengeance, you were to trust the judgment of the judges, and the instructions given to the judge were that if the revenge can only be, or the punishment can only be, what was originally taken or what was originally the harm that was done. It can't escalate. It can't move further, right? And in fact, by Jesus's day, there were monetary fines that you would pay, so that literally it wouldn't be, so if you accidentally killed someone's worker, right, and it was not malicious, you would owe them for their worker.
Yeah.
Right? That was so these were not laws that required you to, well, you took my eye, so I'm going to get your eye. It was intended to do several things. One, it was to make this dispute moving away from the arena of personal vengeance into the system of justice, however, low key that may have been. Secondly, it was what the measures that judges were to use. What's the extent of the punishment? Well, what was the extent of the injury? And that was the measure you were to use. You were not to escalate it. And then the third thing it did is, in contrast to some of the other ancient codes, this rule was given regardless of the statuses of the people involved. So, if you took the eye of a slave, it still mattered, even though it was a slave and you were not. Like this, and every single commentator and person has to say the name of this law, or this set of laws, was lex talionis. And it was just eye for eye, tooth for tooth. And it was the idea, and in God's economy, it was limiting revenge, taking out personal vengeance and its escalation and putting it into a very, like embryonic legal system, but it was governed that, okay, to the exact injury, that's what the punishment would be.
Yeah.
By Jesus's day, like I said, this involved mostly fines. So there weren't a bunch of people running around without eyes and without teeth.
Or jawbones.
Or jawbones, yes. Holy moly. Now, this developed, the ancient world was governed by a law of reciprocity. And this is going to take just a second. The lex talionis is an example of the law of reciprocity. The law of reciprocity says you treat people the way people treat you. If they're good to you, you're good to them. If they harm you, you harm them. That was the basis of the way ancient justice was done, but also in honor and shame societies, this was the foundation of all social relationships. I mean, so much of Jesus's teaching assumes this cultural code.
Right.
That you love those who love you, you hate those who hate you, you give to those who can repay you, you honor those who can honor you. Right? And all of this was based on honor and shame. Honor and shame are public perceptions of you relative to the rest of the community. All right? So what we're going to get into, and to some degree, to a smaller degree, we understand the law of reciprocity. Right? In business, when a salesperson wines you and dines you, what are they hoping to get from you?
Some money.
Yeah, they're hoping that opens you to be amenable to a sale, right? They're creating a kind of social debt that you feel obligated to repay.
And that
when
works
it comes
really
to,
well
you
on
know,
some people. And others of us
Absolutely.
say, listen, Mr. Car Salesman, if you get up one more time, I'm walking out of here.
Totally. Oh my goodness. And it does not work well on others. But like if you get invited to, I mean, this is a dumb example for parents, but if you get invited to like a classmate's birthday party, right? You're bringing a present, and who are you going to invite when it's your kid's birthday? Well,
Right.
even if you weren't going to invite that kid originally, guess what? They're invited now.
Yeah.
Right? Christmas cards. If somebody from your job gets you a Christmas present that you didn't have a present for, right? There's a bit of a like, I'm indebted to them
Yeah.
in some way. I owe them one. We have language for this. I owe them. Right? We put each other in social obligation, right? When I do a favor for you, the idea is that you would, when I come to you for a favor, you would repay that favor, right?
Right.
So the law of reciprocity is a dumb way to even describe it, but it's kind of I need to describe it because it's going to be undercut by Jesus of Nazareth. All right. That's what he's about to do, is to undercut the idea that you harm those who harm you, and you do good to only those who do good to you. The law of reciprocity has two sides to it, a negative side and a positive side. The negative side is harm those who harm you. You have a right to get even. We're going to deal with that one first, right? Retaliation is the idea. And then the second one is you do good only to those who either can repay or do good to you.
Right.
And Jesus is going to dismantle both of those. And you have to understand this, like there's no more foundational way of relating in the ancient Near East in honor shame cultures than this one. Right? This is this social lubrication of the whole thing, of family relationships, of kinship, of employment. I mean, this was the way it worked. And so for Jesus, in his light and heavy, in the midst of his undercutting the righteousness of the Pharisees and embodying this new righteousness that is internal and far more expansive than what the Pharisees were promoting. I mean, like, he's going to dismantle the web of reciprocity. And it makes perfect sense that he would do it here,
Yeah.
right? Because he's dealing with anger and he's dealing with lust and oaths. It's all of the ways that we manipulate and hurt and harm and hide from each other. That's what he's going after. So, Jesus says, you've heard it said, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Now that's summarizing at least 3 Old Testament passages. All right? Now what Jesus is doing, he's not going to contradict it. He's not going to say, nope, that was wrong. What he's going to say is, you don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
In the Old Testament, this was a leap forward, but it was not the righteousness of God. The righteousness of God, right, is displayed in Jesus. The full flowering righteousness of God is forgiveness and reconciliation, nonviolence. All right? The Old Testament was not the full justice of God. And so, yes, this was permitted, just like divorce was, as a concession to the hardness of hearts, and it was a step forward in human society that revenge would be limited, right, to just the harm that was done to you.
Yeah.
And again, the Samson story was just to provide an illustration of what happens when it's not limited that way. So Jesus says, you heard it said, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. Oh, now here we go, baby. Here we go. All right, let's just talk about do not resist an evil person. The word resist is super interesting. The word resist does not mean be passive. The word resist, do not resist an evil person. The word means do not compete with an evil person in their wrongdoing.
Interesting.
In other words, you are forbidden. What he's forbidding is even the attendant response of retaliation.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm harmed. What's the law of reciprocity say?
Harm back.
I harm back.
Yeah.
What Jesus is saying is, nope, you don't have to live by that law of reciprocity anymore. Okay, even though the old righteousness said that you could exact the, punishment, the new righteousness is that you don't even take that step. Now, let me go through all of this because it's so confusing, but thankfully Jesus gives 4 examples of what what do not resist an evil person looks like.
Yeah.
Is this making sense?
Yes.
Okay, 4 examples of what it looks like to not resist an evil person, right? So he's talking about resisting violently. He's not talking about being passive, all right? So let's take the first example. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. So this is the most famous turn the other cheek saying of Jesus. And it's totally misunderstood because it sounds like what Jesus is saying is, oh, okay, well, just pretend like it didn't happen. Or, okay, you're right, I'm a maggot in God's eyes, and so I should take it just because Jesus took it or something. That's not what he's saying at all right? We're called to not resist in terms of returning harm for harm and slap for slap.
I love this.
Now, the biggest thing that has to be said right now is that we are dealing in the area of personal insults. Okay? The fact that he uses the word slap is the key indicator. All right? He's not talking about military violence. He's not talking about just war theory. He's not talking about self-defense in your home.
Yeah.
When you were slapped by, and this is so important that he says, your right cheek, if you were slapped on your right cheek, that was an insult. In fact, it was so grievous an insult that the fine, later in the Mishnah, the fine for being slapped with an open hand, okay, on your left cheek, there was a fine for that because it was an insult. But this was the fine for being slapped on your right cheek by the back of someone's right hand was 4 times the fine. It was that much more degrading. So what I want you to do is wherever you are, look in the mirror and pretend there's someone like you're the person doing the slapping and your reflection is the person being slapped. Right? The only way that you can slap your right cheek is by doing it with the back of your right hand.
Yeah.
Now, lefties, your left hand was your hygienic hand. It was used for toilet purposes. All right? That was not your slap hand. Your slap hand was your right hand.
So you got your crap hand and your slap hand.
Exactly. And so what you would do is this was very, very common for superiors to do this to inferiors, was totally degrading. That you would slap somebody with the back of your right hand to an inferior, so a master to a servant, let's say, and that was communicating the most humiliating insult possible. Right? There was no bigger way to be insulted than this way.
Yeah.
All right? That you really need to understand. We're not talking about war. We're not talking about police. We're talking about insult. Right? All 4 examples are about insults to one's honor.
Yep.
Right? This is not about pacifism. This is about retaliating not in violence, but through creative love. All right? That's what we're talking about. So Jesus is going to blow up the law of reciprocity that would say, well, because it's your social superior, you just have to take it. Or that would say, slap them back.
Right.
What he says instead is turn to them the other cheek also. Now, again, this is so tough to describe on a freaking podcast. But the idea is you would only backhand an inferior with the back of your right hand. The way that you would the way that you would slap an equal in status is with the open palm of your right hand on their other cheek.
Right.
Right? It's tough to describe. A backhanded slap on your right cheek, insult, done to an inferior. When that inferior turns their other cheek to you, the only way to hit them again is with the open palm of your right hand, which is how you would slap an equal.
Yep. I love it.
So what Jesus, you got to understand this, gang. What Jesus is doing is he's saying, what does it mean to not resist an evil person? Well, it doesn't mean be passive, and it doesn't mean hit them back. Rather, because this, again, all of these examples presume an audience, because these are public shame and honor examples. When you're insulted that way, offer your other cheek so that that the person who insulted you now has to make a choice. If they insult you again, they have to now recognize your status as an equal.
Yeah.
If they're going to slap you again, right?
Yep.
Or they've been shamed because you've neither cowered nor have you fought back.
Right.
Their evil is exposed, right? And I'm not saying this spares you from a beating or something, not at all. But what Jesus is illustrating is a way in which we respond to evil by exposing it and disarming it through creative, nonviolent agape love. And it allows our oppressor to be exposed for the evil that they do. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
In any way, shape, or form so far? Like, this is super, super important. So the next example. If anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. All right, now you had two garments. Your shirt, which was your undergarment, okay? And your cloak, which was your outer garment. Your outer garment, for very poor people, often doubled as your blanket and sleeping bag. So in the Old Testament law, you were not allowed to keep, if somebody had pledged their cloak to you to guarantee a loan, you were not allowed to keep it overnight, so they at least had something to keep them warm. So Jesus is using hyperbole here, just like he's been using the whole time, right? If your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. Right? He's illustrating a point. Dude, yes. Yeah, turn the freaking cheek. Absolutely. If you're getting sued for your underwear, then give him your cloak too. Now, why? Because there were incredible Jewish taboos against being naked and forcing someone to be naked.
Yeah.
You would, in offering your cloak, be shaming them. Right? And again, you can't think of shaming the way we think of shaming. What you're doing is you're communicating their aggressiveness and their oppression of you and their insult to you. You're drawing attention to that, not by fighting back and not by cowering, but rather by stepping aside and forcing them to treat you and admit that you are a dignified adult.
Right.
Right? You have dignity as a human person. And so to stand there naked, yes, would be humiliating to you, but it would humiliate the person suing you for your underwear more.
Right.
And the social pressure would be for the person to give you back both. Right? The third example, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Right? This is the area of personal insult. Right? This is very well known. The Roman soldiers could conscript passersby. This happened when Jesus was being crucified, right? Some poor schmo on the road gets, named Simon, gets conscripted to carry Jesus's cross. And so in this instance, what we've got is somebody who's, they've got their kit and they can force anybody else to walk 1,000 steps,
right?
Roughly a mile. And the Jews hated this practice because it was degrading, right? It was degrading. So what happens when somebody who is that ugly inside, that they practice this as a form of degradation, looks at them with their chin up and says, "No, I'll actually go another 1,000." Mm-hmm. What's just happened there? Right? Like the scales have been balanced.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like these are creative, and they're brilliant in their creative, the creative application of what Jesus means by non-resist. Okay? Resisting an evil person, which Jesus is banning, is the law of reciprocity, right? Harm for harm, insult for insult, right? He gives examples of what this means. What's it mean to like not resist when a military person conscripts me to carry their pack? Well, I don't know. Wouldn't it be interesting if all of a sudden you just offered to do it twice?
Right.
What would that do to them? And again, in an honor shame culture, this does something. This exerts pressure, right? Or what about if someone backhands you and you turn the cheek and offer them the opportunity to hit you again as an equal?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's all interesting. I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but each of these brings both parties to a more equal table, right? Without confrontation.
Because the victim isn't passive.
Yeah,
exactly. The victim isn't passive.
You're either
the victim
slapped with open hand as an
cheek.
equal, right? Or the shame is brought in the second example,
to the courtroom.
No, it's
because you offer them your cloak.
Yeah.
You you are active in this.
Right.
And so Jesus is just so freaking brilliant. Because think about it, like here's a dumb way I've tried to practice this, all right? So I see, because remember, we're dealing with personal insults.
Right.
We're not dealing with global war. We're not dealing with terrorism. We're not dealing with, right? These are insults. So in traffic, this is the best example of where things can escalate, right? So the law of reciprocity in traffic is someone cuts me off, I cut them off.
Right.
Someone does something stupid, I honk, I point, I show them they're number one, whatever. And so I've done this, I've managed to do this a few times where I'll make a mistake driving and someone will be totally offended by it and they'll be yelling at me and flipping me off and yelling. And so I will make sure I pull up next to them and roll down my window. And you can just see, right? They're ready to go. And I would just say, I've literally said this, hey, I'm so sorry. I made a mistake back there. I know it was upsetting. It won't happen again. Please forgive me.
Right.
And I don't know, nothing happens there. They just drive off, or maybe they'll still yell stuff or whatever, but it's less about what happens to them than more about what happens to me, right? That I want to become the kind of person who, even when insulted, doesn't have to insult back.
Well, I'd imagine even in that scenario, oftentimes it would be a diffusing, like that person's ready to take the Samson route for that example and show up at your doorstep with a jawbone at some point. But instead, sometimes I think that you're expecting this violent response. You get something opposite of that, something that is more in love, for lack of a better term. And then you kind of have to reconcile with that as you drive away, which can be a diffusing and kind of like I don't know. So I think that is a good example because that can make that other driver kind of sit, not with shame, but with the idea of like, why was I so mad?
That's right.
And so then they're reconciling through that.
Right. And I was genuinely wrong.
Yeah.
However, I may have not been malicious or even aware.
Right.
But, okay. And that doesn't, and again, we're dealing with small potatoes because that's what the passage deals with.
Right.
Right? Somebody says something about you, like a friend of mine practices something he calls rhetorical nonviolence. And it's the idea on social media that you don't have to respond to everything. Yeah. And when you do, respond with kindness rather than harm for harm, tweet for tweet, post with post.
Yeah, well, that's a very relevant idea right now.
Yeah, he's so freaking brilliant because, this is where we live. And I feel justified, just the way Samson did, because they did it first.
Right.
Right? I mean, Samson's comments as he goes through, well, this time I get to, well, because they did this, I was just doing to them what they did to me, right? That is the stuff of human discord and division. And Jesus steps in the middle of all of that. Now he's going to step into it positively next episode, right? He's going to say, listen, your love extends even to those who are outside of your kinship group. Because you had obligations to your kinship group. That was part of the law of reciprocity, right? Love those who love you. And then Jesus is going to be like, yeah, but if you love those who love you, don't even tax collectors do that. Come on, baby. This is about harming those who harm you, right? And again, we're dealing with insults. I know we can what about this to well, what about abuse? And what about Okay, great. All great questions, not what this is dealing with.
Right.
This passage is not dealing with that. This passage is Jesus is inviting us, and this is so important, to be free from the need to protect my honor. And if that isn't relevant, I got nothing else, right? I mean, it could not be more profoundly relevant to our world. To be free from the need to protect my honor. Because there are some commentators that think what will happen is if you offer the other cheek, the crowd will intervene and shame the person that slapped it. Mm-hmm. If you offer your cloak, the crowd will intervene. That you invite other people to defend your honor, not you.
Right.
Oh my goodness. I mean, just think about how marriages would be transformed if I did not have to trade insult for insult, harsh statement for harsh statement.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. So what Jesus is doing, I mean, let's just put a little cap on it, is while Moses limited revenge, right? That was the law in the Torah. Jesus taught the abandonment of vengeance for personal insult, and instead to react in creative ways that value your dignity as a human image bearer person and do not harm the other person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there have been times where, and again, I do this so wrong. So these are the vast exceptions. But it's like there have been times when somebody is taking credit for something I've done or said, and I just want to go, no, I was that genius,
right?
You know. And then there's just this Jesus voice that's like, really? Because what do I want to do there? I want to protect my honor,
yep,
my reputation, my name. Somebody says something on social media, and oh my goodness, the insulting stuff. Right. And so there's a discipline, because I'll throw out some inflammatory stuff every now and again on, and the comments that come back are, wow. Sometimes they're incredibly personal. And what I want to do is just flame back.
Right.
And so, you know, when you get the poor in spirit and the merciful and the peacemakers and the persecuted together, right? What are they like?
Yeah.
What kind of politics do they practice? Well, they don't verbally manipulate each other, right? They keep their vows. They make it safe for women to be among the community. They deal with anger and contempt. And they are working their hardest to forego reciprocity in both directions.
Yeah.
Because all I want to do is harm those who harm me.
Yeah.
Right?
So there's a
now Paul will
there's a theme running still here with this whole thing. I'm just trying to keep the sausage link together as we go through each of these sections, but there has been so much on being equals at the table, right? Getting rid of objectification, anger to the neighbor, and then all this. So much of what he's doing so far has just been about like this new kingdom that he's establishing or building or setting up or whatever. So much of it is like, this is how we exist amongst each other as equals.
That's right. Oh, that's so good, bro. Yes, he's teaching us what it means to love your neighbor.
Yeah. Weird.
Yeah. Shocking. And it's brutal. It's brutal. And that's why it's much easier to settle for being a Christian. You know, I believe the doctrinal statement, and I go to church, and, you know, I need my inspirational self-improvement words. See, Jesus is deconstructing the way we live and see ourselves and other people.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's if we really thought people were image bearers, then how could I harm them in response to a personal insult?
Right.
How could I verbally manipulate them if I wouldn't want that done to me? How could I objectify them sexually? Right? How could I hold them in contempt if they're created by? I mean, now I know it all sounds pie in the sky. I get it. And it doesn't answer all the questions about, well, self-defense and violence. And okay, that's great. But what if we just started here? Let's put all those big questions aside, and let's just talk about the insult that comes later today on social media. How you respond to that.
I think this is
I think it's so great.
It'd be pie in the sky if it was like, if he was like, this is how you change the nation. You know, and it was, but instead it's like, here is how you exist with your neighbor.
Right.
I think you can handle this. I think all of you can handle this. You know, it's not like a whole, like, I'm flipping the whole culture upside down in one foul swoop. It's like all these great little, you know, he's making a stew, and he's bringing in all the different ingredients one at a time.
Oh, he's making Jesus stew.
Jesus stew.
And think about the people in our world who have taken this seriously and applied it way beyond personal insult, right? I mean, we make heroes of those people. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, Martin Luther King, obviously, I mean, the practice of nonviolence. Now, I'm not getting into that yet, right? That's not this passage yet.
Right.
But he certainly extrapolated from this passage.
Yeah.
And the New Testament does too. I mean, the New Testament just blatantly says, you know, he suffered when he endured what he did on the cross as an example for those of us. Mm-hmm. We can't, that's so far... No, of course not. We litigate. We get revenge. We file for damages. And I'm not saying there isn't a place for that stuff. I'm just saying it doesn't start there. It starts with how I treat my wife when she's had a rough day and she says some snarky comment and it triggers something in me and I just want to snark right back. And then we're in these ruts, right, that you just immediately fall back into over and over
She's
and over
your
again.
Crops.
She's burning your crop. I'm grabbing a jawbone.
No more busting my chops. You're burning my crops. Sorry.
So that's the thing I love about Jesus. It's just like, so what if we, as a political entity called the Kingdom of God, worked on being uninsultable? You know what I mean? Like, we just didn't have to always protect our honor.
Right.
Oh, I mean, so many of my just like real life on the ground relationships would be different.
Do you think that
Jesus,
MLK, that example of like the Bloody Sunday march, them going across the bridge, it ended in violence. They came back and marched again, and the whole world kind of felt the shame of what happened on the first march.
They
and
saw it. It was exposed. It was exposed. The problem with social media, though, is our shame response is being deadened. It's being numbed. So we don't have... Well, the good part about social media is like the reason George Floyd had the catalytic effect it did, one of the reasons, is because it was such a... Like, we saw it with our eyes. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, you're sitting there for 8 minutes going, this is the most horrific thing I've seen. The downside of it is that we see all of these murders and all of this suffering, and our outrage. We're just like, our outrage meters are empty.
Right.
You know. But I think Gandhi and MLK. I mean, and even on smaller levels, I mean, they're just incredible stories. You look at a guy like Shane Claiborne. They're incredible stories of people who are doing peacemaking in these very creative avenues. And, you know, I don't think we have to be paralyzed with, well, what do I do when I'm when I'm insulted, and what's the creative way here to get back and shame somebody? That's That's not loving them. I mean, what Jesus is inviting is for me to lay down the need to protect my honor and allow the community to help do that.
Yeah.
What, you know, when MLK, when those pictures that even now are so disturbing, it did do something, absolutely. But it wouldn't have done something had he been fighting back with clubs and knives and whatever else, right? I mean, it was the non-resistance in the face of such evil that was the thing.
And then that second march is kind of almost like the turn the other cheek. Like going back over the bridge after the first one ended violently, that second march over the bridge shifted a cultural understanding and kind of brought his argument and brought that shame. He didn't have to even say it. You know what I mean? I'm trying to like look at some examples from at least recent history where this kind of action had an effect that the society reacted to.
Well, there were revolutions in Eastern Europe right around the time the wall
right.
In Berlin was torn down that were totally peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
There were just people on the streets singing, and regimes fell. And I know, obviously, this raises a whole bunch of other questions about rioting and looting and whatever.
Right.
But that's not what this is about. This is about practicing rhetorical nonviolence with your spouse.
Right.
And and even if that just means keep your mouth shut, if you can't say anything nice, you know, I mean, there's a place for that. Or muting or blocking somebody instead of just firing off snarky replies. So anyway, Jesus again takes what was light and shows us how heavy it turns out to be, right? The law of reciprocity is easy.
Right.
Eye for eye, done. Love those who love me, no problem.
Right.
Right? But man, to do this, ugh. I mean, literally, you've got to be transformed. I mean, more and more into the likeness of Jesus to pull this stuff off.
Yeah.
Because that's just not at all natural. And so, and just think about even what our world is based on. Our world, I mean, I love the Marvel comics and this. You know, I don't like the comics, but the movies. And so many of the movies I love are movies of the redemptive use of violence.
Yeah.
Right? What a boring movie.
Somebody shared a meme the other day, and it said, if Bruce Wayne used his fortune to change the like socioeconomic policies or whatever in Gotham, he would have had an immense like effect on crime, but instead he went out and just beat up people. Or something to that effect. And I was like, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, reciprocity's easy. So anyway, the way of the kingdom works differently. And so we're going to see that in the positive sense of grace.
Yeah.
Right? Jesus is going to say, hey, reciprocity is just love those who love you. I tell you, love your enemies. Holy moly. So anyway, my friends, I love how you put it. I don't know. I think maybe it was last episode. You know, we're getting this over in small doses over weeks. They were hearing this, and you just, what you could not mistake, okay? And let's end on this. You could not mistake. You could not come away thinking this is some private morality that deals with me going to heaven. This was all public. This was all communal. This was all relational. It was all social, and it had every bit to do with the life and the guts and the blood and the dirt of human life.
Yeah.
There's no way you'd think, oh yeah, I need to accept Jesus in my heart. You would be so profoundly compelled or repulsed by the vision of doing human life in the way that he presents that you could not have just a reaction that was like, I didn't really like the sermon today.
Right. Yeah. It's very participatory.
Like this was social. Yeah. This was social revolution, you know? And And so there are many ways we can escape its obligations. One of those is thinking, this is optional. One of those is thinking, let's talk about war and nonviolence and self-defense. Nope, that's not it either. This is about, do you believe that you do not have to respond when your honor is challenged and when you are insulted? And again, Jesus is advocating doormat. He's not advocating victim.
No.
He's not saying stay in an abusive thing. That's not what he's doing at all. Right? The examples he's giving are very active.
Yeah.
And there's something to do in response to evil.
Yeah.
So anyway, bam.
I do hope somebody's getting him a glass of water, because it's a lot. He's just kind of running straight through. Like, we are getting that in weekly doses, but man, he's just like wrecking house.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the thing. No one told me. Maybe they did, and I just didn't hear it. But I don't remember hearing how unbelievably disruptive this thing is. Like, there's just no way to do human life as it naturally comes to us.
Yeah.
And in any way take Jesus seriously. You just can't.
Yeah. I mean, the end of the story is it really points to how obviously disruptive this was. You know?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So anyway, I mean, we could just marvel at this all the time, but man, what a joy to be able to go through stuff like this with you guys. Hope it's helpful. Hope it's somewhat clear. We're getting tons of questions in. I don't know how we'll get to them all yet, but we see them and we read them. And I think to myself, that's a really good question. And they're all far too long for email. So I just cannot email back 3 pages of stuff. So I save them for future episodes, but then we're always doing stuff. So I don't know how we're going to do it, Tim. We got to figure out a way, because we got to push back on lying. We've got some, and I don't know if anyone will still be listening, but doggone it, Timothy, I need to give a shout out to Joshua and Kelly, who joined our Patreon team. How fun is that? So thank you, Joshua and Kelly. And our friend Brenda was completely generous to us in some stuff. And so we are unbelievably privileged to get to do what we do.
Yes.
So that's all I got. Last words, Timothy?
Nope. It's a lot to sit with.
All right, friends. Till next time.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. The Vox Podcast is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is supported by listeners like yourself. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Vox Podcast. You can also engage with the hosts on social media at facebook.com/Vox Podcast, on Instagram at Vox Podcast, and on Twitter at Mike Erre. Thank you for walking this road with us.